Heart of the Wolf by author A. Mariposa. Chapter 9. They spent most of the drive in silence. It was cold in the car, even with the heat on, and Maddy snuggled into her hoodie to keep warm. Now that the rush of the arcade was fading, she was growing tired. Gareth asked after a while.
So, he's your stepdad?
Yeah, Dean Harvey. I have my mom's last name.
You know him a long time?
Most my life. He's the only dad I've really known. My mom met him when I was 5.
Right. A real part of the family.
Gareth sounded nonplussed. Maddy stared out the window as the Camaro passed through a low fog bank. The highway to Davenport was black and empty. They had passed one car in the last 15 minutes. In these parts, they were more likely to hit a deer this late at night than run into traffic. Her mom met Dean down at the B joint when Maddy was 5. He was a lot different back then. He worked laying brick for the union, drove a new truck and owned a little fishing boat. He was a fun guy back then. Maddy recalled him taking their family on camping trips. That was a long time ago, before his back injury, then the spiral of drinking and painkillers. Maddy didn't know if Dean and her mom ever got married officially. She knew her mom wore a ring, but she didn't remember the wedding.
What about your bio dad? You ever hear from him?
No, Mom called him my sperm donor. I think he was a trucker just driving through, or something like that. Maddy shrugged. The mention of her bio dad pissed off Dean, so she rarely brought it up. She didn't have a name or nothing to go off, anyway. Gareth stopped asking questions after that. She didn't blame him. It was late and he was probably exhausted. She couldn't banish her creeping sense of guilt. She felt bad, like she had messed up. Driving out to Davenport to rescue her dad from jail wasn't the ideal ending to a first date. In an awkward attempt to assuage her guilt, she spoke up. I had a lot of fun at Zippy's. I'd love to do it again sometime. Gareth looked over at her like she'd said something cute. He reached over and squeezed her leg.
Same, baby.
They pulled off the freeway and started down Davenport's main strip. Davenport was an old city. In its heyday, it was probably a nice place to live, with a 4-screen theater downtown and lots of cute shopping boutiques. Nowadays, the theater was boarded up and the shopping boutiques had turned into shady little business fronts. Laundry mats, pawn shops, Chinese food restaurants and the occasional florist. This late at night, shops were closed and storefronts were dark. They passed by the occasional neon sign. Gareth parked on the empty street outside the Davenport police station. They went in together. Maddy walked up to a cop sitting at a bulletproof glass counter. She introduced herself and handed over an ID. Soon after, another officer brought out her stepdad from the back hallway. Dean Harvey was a short, stocky man with a beer belly and a face like a wrung-out Leonardo DiCaprio. He was probably handsome in his youth, though Maddy couldn't really see it. He now resembled any other bar rat. He was squat and barrel-chested, with thick arms from laying brick most of his life. He had wispy blonde hair that he usually wore under a baseball cap when he was working the odd job. A week's worth of gray scruff covered his neck and jaw. On this particular evening, vomit stained the front of his denim jacket. His face was red and puffy from drinking for several days straight. His blonde hair was greasy and mussed. He reeked of liquor.
Maddy, my girl, you're a good kid, you know that?
Hey, Dad. Dean stumbled a few steps forward like he meant to wrap her in a hug, then he caught himself on the wall. His bloodshot eyes traveled to Gareth. He seemed to sense intuitively that Gareth was not just a friend.
Who's this?
Dad, this is Gareth. He's my boyfriend. It was her first time using that word to introduce anyone in her life. It should have been a special occasion, like a homecoming game or prom night, or maybe a dinner with her folks. That's how normal kids broke the news to their normal parents. But here she was at a police station at 1 a.m., talking to her old man with vomit on his jacket.
You have a boyfriend? How'd that happen? You owe money or something? Aha. Kidding. Look here, dude. You hurt my daughter and I'll shove my shotgun up your ass.
The cops exchanged a glance. To his credit, Gareth stayed silent with his hands shoved in his pockets. He was a good half-foot taller than her dad. He didn't seem put off by the threat, but he also didn't act friendly at all. Another cop emerged from a hallway to their left with a young pit bull mix on a leash. It had a fawn-colored coat with big white paws. It looked maybe part lab. The dog ran up to them, tail wagging enthusiastically. It walked like a puppy who hadn't grown into its legs. "And who's this?" Maddy asked, relieved to have a distraction. She let the dog sniff her hand, then it began licking her fingers.
This is Joker. I picked him up last night from a buddy. What do you think, Maddy? You always wanted a dog, remember?
I think I was like 10 years old when I said that. I don't know, Dad. I didn't realize it was a puppy. She's going to need training.
Peesh, you're always so serious. You worry too much for a kid your age. Just look at his lil face. Let's keep him. We're keeping him. What's a home without a dog?
Maddy sighed. Despite the added responsibility, the dog was adorable. Little Joker, who was actually a girl, was just too cute. She sat down and scratched, losing balance and half falling, then wiggling in a happy circle. Yeah, okay, I guess it's all right. What's a home without a dog? The cop handed Joker's leash to her. The puppy immediately went up to Gareth and rolled onto her back with an eager whine. Gareth reached down and scratched the pup's soft pink tummy. Joker promptly started to pee. Gareth stepped back to avoid the stream.
Shit, you got paper towels?
One of the cops answered him.
The janitor will get it. We got some paperwork for Madeline to sign before we release Mr. Harvey. His license is out of date, so we'll need a current address for the ticket and the fines.
Fines? Maddy felt a little sick, the police officer explained.
He broke the window on a man's car. We cited him for drunk and disorderly conduct and destruction of private property. I don't think the damage will exceed a few $100s. So that's good news. No criminal charges.
Maddy glanced up at Gareth, unable to read his expression. He was frowning at her stepdad again, who was clinging to the wall for balance. How much do you think all that will cost?
We'll send the damage assessment and any follow-up tickets via mail. Make sure to update that home address. Failure to pay the fines within the allotted time will only add more fees.
Maddy sighed. She crossed to the counter and started filling out the paperwork, then signed the release. Already her mind was running its old program. The last 48 hours spent with Gareth disappeared as though they had never happened. This was just another typical Friday night, getting a call from somewhere to rescue her stepdad. She would take Dean back to the trailer. Then what? She chewed on her bottom lip. Gareth wanted her to stay at his place, but what about her stepdad? This was brand new territory. She might be over 18, but she had never tried to spend several days away from home before. Dean could get needy and volatile when he was coming off a bender. That's when he was the most unpredictable. If he threw a tantrum, he could do all sorts of damage. And someone needed to take care of the dog. Maddy felt the weight of her life start to suffocate her again. Come on, let's go home, Dad. She left the station with Joker's leash in one hand and Gareth walking silently beside her. She couldn't get a read on him. She knew he was unimpressed with her father. Who wouldn't be? But his face was stoic, his lips firm. He unlocked the car and her dad slid into the back seat, where he sprawled out. Joker jumped in after him. Then Maddy and Gareth got in the front. The drive back to Black River was excruciating. At first her dad rambled on and on about a big win at the casino and a subsequent party spree around Davenport. His story wandered in and out of bars, clubs, and hotel rooms. He talked about a fight with a stripper that got him and his buddy tossed out of a club, then throwing his beer bottle at a parked car that cracked a window, which ended in his arrest. Some cursing and ranting about the oppressive socio-political system in America. He offered Gareth a bunch of money, like $200, to drive an extra 30 minutes to South Davenport to pick up cocaine from a buddy. Gareth declined with a few words. Then Dean's muttering faded into snores as he toppled over and crashed. Joker wiggled around the back seat, whining. Maddy was overwhelmed. Sorry about that, really, I'm so sorry, he's just drunk. I don't think he can really afford cocaine.
It's fine, Mads. Don't worry about it.
She couldn't tell if Gareth was pissed or just tired. She sighed. She always felt shaky and fragile when her stepdad got like this, maybe because he was unpredictable. She picked at her fingernails as the Camaro shot down the highway like a bullet. Gareth's big, warm hand suddenly landed on hers, covering both of her hands with his own, interrupting her anxious fidgeting. Maddy glanced up at him. His eyes were focused on the road. He still hadn't said anything. But he kept his hand over hers. She wondered what he was thinking. They got back to her trailer well past midnight. Gareth carried her dad into the house without needing to be asked. He dumped Dean on the couch with a grimace of disgust. Maddy took Joker out to pee, then let the dog back in the house. The big pup immediately jumped onto the couch next to her dad and curled up to sleep. Maddy wondered how she was going to afford dog food. Then she started picking up the living room. Gareth hesitated before helping her. For a half hour or so, they picked up trash and moved furniture around. Then, finally, he came to stand by her side.
Let's go.
Maddy hesitated. She dropped her eyes and shoved her hands in the pockets of her hoodie. She still hadn't figured out where she was going to stay the night.
Maddy, you're coming home with me.
Maddy felt her shoulders grow tense. She swayed on her feet. She wanted to go with him. God, she would like nothing more. But some terrible chain held her bound to the trailer and the absurd man sleeping on the couch. She might hate her stepdad, but she also cared about him in that foolish, stubborn, childlike way. He wasn't a perfect person by any means, but he looked out for her in his own way, for her mom's sake. He was the only family she had left. He called her his daughter. She couldn't just abandon the old fool. Her hands curled into fists. Let's talk outside. They walked out the back door into the yard, just beyond the light from the kitchen window. How many times had Gareth led her back to this spot from the mountainside? Now they stood face to face. He crossed his arms, the tree line at his back, his eyes solemn.
Don't tell me you're staying here with that sorry sack of shit.
There it was, anger. Maddy flinched at Gareth's words. She tried to keep her voice level as she replied, Look, I don't like him either, but he's my dad. I can't just leave him, you see how he is. He could hurt himself, and... I don't know, Gareth, this is my home. It's been a crazy few days, it would be nice for things to go back to normal. Gareth was silent, and Maddy bit her lip again. She hated feeling like she was disappointing him. I know you want me to come with you, but I don't think it's a good idea. Not yet, anyway. I need to keep an eye on Dean.
All right, so let me ask, how bad does it have to get before you leave?
Maddy's eyes widened. She sucked in a breath. What do you mean?
Just how long do I have to wait before I drag you out? Until he beats you again? Or burns down the trailer with you inside of it?
He looked pissed. Maddy's thoughts flashed to the gun in his car. He had a weapon. What if he got violent? Would he attack her father? She didn't want to take that risk. Gareth, that's my business, not yours.
I'm your boyfriend now. Those scars on your back? Those are my business. Someone's got to take care of you.
That happened a long time ago. You don't have any say over what I do.
I think I have some say. Especially over your safety.
No, you fucking don't. I'm an adult and I can make my own decisions. Gareth half smiled, but it was not a nice look.
So now you're an adult. Right, and you're gonna make all the big decisions. All right.
Maddy was furious. Don't mock me.
Then stop acting like a child.
Fuck you.
You're protecting him.
I'm not.
You're enabling him.
What? Maddy glared. So this is my fault? I can't help who my dad is. Gareth spoke in a low growl.
But you help him every day. You pay the bills. You clean up his shit. You buy groceries. When are you calling it quits? You're not his daughter, Mads. You're his housekeeper and his caretaker. That's it. That man doesn't give a shit about being your father. He's using you.
His words pierced her. She bit her cheek in sudden pain. The brutal honesty was more than she could take. What did Gareth know about her family? Dean was the only father she had ever known. She felt herself shutting down. Thank you for reminding me that my stepfather doesn't give a shit about me. Gareth's expression changed, his anger fading from his face.
Maddy, I didn't mean.
You did. And you're an asshole for saying it. Gareth hung his head. Maddy continued, her words direct and practical. You're right, I don't really have a dad or a mom. No one really cares about me, but that doesn't change anything. I've been on my own for a long time. I don't need you looking down on me, or pointing out everything that's wrong with my life. Gareth stared at her. He looked at a complete loss for words. Maddy folded her arms around herself. I think you should go. I need some time to think about all this.
Right.
Really, Gareth? Just leave.
Okay.
He reached into his pocket and pulled out his keys. Then he paused. He looked back at the house.
Do me a favor?
Yeah, what?
Call me if you need anything. I mean it.
She wondered if he would try to touch her or kiss her before he left, but he didn't. She watched him walk away. Every muscle in her body yearned to spring after him, to run and wrap her arms around his back and beg him not to go, but she couldn't move. Her feet remained glued to the ground. Fuck. How did this happen? She felt torn in half. Strange how just a few hours ago they'd been laughing together in the arcade, and now the night ended with this sour pit in her stomach. Maddy heard the Camaro roar to life. She ached inside as she listened to his car run down the gravel driveway, growing more and more distant. Then she turned back to the house. She felt like she had made a mistake. With a surge of anxiety, she reached for her phone, intending to call him, but she stopped herself. He called her a child. It was a slap in the face. He couldn't use her age against her like that. He didn't have to speak such ugly truths out loud, to her face, like he did. Just because he was older than her didn't make him her keeper. Her stepdad might be a pain in the ass, and a belligerent drunk, but he was her only family. Was she supposed to abandon Dean to move in with some guy she had known for 2 days? Putting it like that, it seemed insane. How could Gareth ask her to make such an impossible choice? She was used to taking shit from people, but his words shot straight through her defenses and struck a nerve. He was the first person to get a front row seat of her shitty life, and instead of helping her, she felt judged. All right, so that's it. Maybe it really is over. Maddy sighed. She felt sick to her stomach. Was she really ready for a relationship? For 2 days, she had lost herself in the rush of being with him, her wildest fantasy come to life, but now her stepdad was home and reality was knocking. Dean Harvey was a hurricane. Her stepdad's chaos took up so much of her energy, now she wondered if she had room for Gareth or anyone else. Maybe it would be better for her to call things off. Fuck. She felt like she wanted to cry and scream at the same time. Maddy went back into the house. Dean snored and grumbled on the couch. It was a familiar scene. Everything back to the way it should be, as though the terrifying night of the break-in had never happened. Whatever money, debt, or stash of drugs those thugs had been after would remain a mystery. She doubted Dean would remember or tell her. She wanted to cry, but instead she sucked in a deep breath. If she gave herself time to wallow in her feelings, they would swallow her alive. She'd figure out her shit on her own, like she always did. Joker jumped off the couch and followed her down the hallway, her skinny tail wagging. Maddy let the big puppy into her room. Together, they climbed into bed. Joker stretched out instantly against her back, as though she had always slept there. Maddy felt a little better. She turned and pushed her face into Joker's sleek tan fur. She whispered to the dog, "I'm sorry you're part of this mess, but you don't gotta take care of me, okay? I'll take care of you. I'll figure it out." Maddy wondered if she should text Gareth, but she didn't know what to say. She was too exhausted, physically and emotionally, to hold a conversation. She hadn't planned to be back in her trailer so soon. In truth, she was surprised she was falling asleep. She closed her eyes, trying to ignore the deep, painful throb in her heart. Thank you for listening to Heart of the Wolf, a paranormal romance story about forbidden first love. Now available in print and ebook format on Amazon.com. Please subscribe to this channel and stay tuned for the next chapter, starting now. Chapter 10. Dean sprawled on the couch and moaned the following day. Maddy brought him water and ibuprofen. Then she tiptoed around the trailer, picking up and straightening what she could. She tried not to bother him. He was always in a sour mood the day after a long bender. Sometimes he was in a shit mood the whole week. With any luck, he'd sleep it off. She was a nervous wreck. Memories of the break-in haunted her as she cleaned up the trailer. She tried not to look at the bullet hole in the wall. She kept glancing out the front windows, thinking she saw someone in the driveway, but of course no one was there. "Congratulations, Maddy," she told herself. "You've reached a new level of paranoid." It was afternoon by the time Dean got his ass up off the couch. Maddy was in the kitchen trying to clean the massive stack of dirty dishes in the sink. She wasn't making much progress. The sink kept clogging, and they were on a septic, so she couldn't use a garbage disposal. She kept emptying the little strainer into the garbage. The stench of mold made her eyes water. Then her dad groaned, sat up and climbed unsteadily to his feet. His face was red and swollen. He wandered through the living room and turned down the hallway, trudging to the bathroom. Maddy heard the fan turn on. When Dean finally came back out, he was still zipping up his trousers and buckling his belt. He paused at the entrance to the living room. That's when he noticed the crumbling drywall and the bullet hole. He poked at the hole with his finger.
The heck? Something happened to the wall? Wowzers. That's a bullet. And what's with all the caution tape on the front porch?
There was a break-in.
No shit?
Yeah. Dean looked around the living room again. Maddy cleared her throat. She had been dreading this moment all day, her inevitable confrontation with her father.
Did they take anything?
No, but they were looking for you. They wanted me to give you a message. They said you owed them money. I think they might come back if you don't pay them.
Pay them? Pay who?
Dean adopted a bewildered look. Maddy glowered. Denial. All right. His act was pretty convincing, but she had learned not to take him seriously. Ever. "So, you don't know anything about that?" she probed. With a scowl, he grumbled.
I don't owe anyone a damn thing.
Maddy found that hard to believe. She felt a little nauseated. It might not mean anything to her father, but she remembered the giant man's body on top of her from that night, his weight suffocating her, holding her down, ripping her shirt. She was pretty sure these guys meant business. Something was up. She couldn't let her dad sweep it under the rug. She gripped the side of the countertop where her dad couldn't see her hands. "What about those letters from Gelson's and Associates?"
What the fuck? You reading my mail?
"No, I just noticed."
Mind your own fucking business.
She pushed on, for her own self-preservation. She explained, "I didn't read any letters, I just saw them on the table. I didn't recognize the company. Are they bills or something?"
Nope. Probably advertisements. Just ignore them.
Bad news. Now she was doubly worried. She didn't know what her stepfather had gotten himself involved in, but it seemed pretty dangerous, and he was hell-bent on hiding it from her. "These guys were pretty serious. They're going to come back if you don't pay them. I'm worried about you, Dad. Are you in trouble?"
No. What trouble? I'm the life of the party. Anyway, I got money, so I'll handle it.
Handle it? Sure, like he handled everything else. "Dad, if you just tell me."
So these guys who broke in, did the cops get them?
Maddy blinked. She scratched the back of her head and glanced outside, remembering the story on the news. No, actually, It's a little weird. I guess they were attacked by a wolf. They didn't survive.
A wolf? What the hell?
It was kinda wild. That's what the cops said when I made a report. A wolf attacked them.
In our own backyard? No shit. Well, dang. So they're dead?
Yeah, they found 5 bodies in the woods.
Well, shit. What are you all worked up about then? Look at you, making a mountain out of a molehill. If these fuckers are dead, then no one's gonna come hassle us again.
Maddy looked down at the sink, feeling frustrated and a little embarrassed. How did he always make her feel stupid?
Fucking ridiculous. Thinking I'm in some trouble. You're just a kid. Don't forget that. You might pay a few bills, but you don't know shit.
Dean slumped back onto the couch with a deep sigh. Maddy bit her lip, a mixture of troubling emotions warring inside of her. She felt angry, ashamed, and invisible. Dean didn't seem to care that she was home when the break-in happened, or that her head was bandaged. He didn't ask if she was all right. She was a missing person on the news. The whole town knew, but he didn't. It never bothered her before how Dean never asked about her. But now it did. It disturbed her. The more she thought about it, the less safe she felt in the trailer. She doubted Dean would lift a finger to protect her if more thugs showed up. Dean started rummaging for his phone between the couch cushions.
I gotta call my buddies. They're not going to believe this shit. A fucking wolf? Dang.
Yeah, do that. Maddy mumbled. She didn't think he heard her. Dean pulled his phone out and fumbled around with it. Maddy went outside. She took Joker with her. Having the puppy around the house was a nice distraction, but it came with its own challenges. She didn't have any dog food, so she fed the dog scrambled eggs and a can of tuna fish that morning. She didn't have a leash either, so she used a length of nylon paracord she found in one of Dean's boxes of random junk. She tied it in a loop around Joker's neck, then she took her on a little walk through the woods. As she walked, Maddy checked her phone to see if Gareth had texted her. It was almost noon. She hadn't heard anything yet from him, not even a platonic good morning. She refused to text first. She didn't want to chase after him and look clingy, especially after telling him to leave last night. But damn, didn't he care? You said you needed time to think about things, she reminded herself, but she still hadn't arrived at any answers. She felt angry and sullen. His words from last night still stung.
You're not his daughter. You're enabling him. That man doesn't give a shit about being your father. Stop acting like a child.
Tears welled in her eyes. She knew Dean took advantage of her in many small ways, but she was orphaned after her mom died. She could have been homeless or put in foster care. Dean stepped up in his own way. He was her only family. What did Gareth know? Despite her stepdad's nastiness, she was relieved to see him safe at home. Sometimes she wished he was dead, but she didn't really want to see him hurt. Deep down, she hoped someday he would kick his drinking habit and straighten out. She still believed it was possible. Joker pulled at her leash suddenly. She whined at something in the woods. Then, without warning, she lunged. Maddy didn't have time to react. Her grip slipped on the leash and the dog took off through the forest. Joker, no! Joker bounded off through the underbrush, her tail wagging furiously. Without thinking, Maddy took off after the dog. She plunged into the woods, following Joker's yellow body through the ferns and blackberry vines. Luckily, Maddy was a fast runner. She caught up with Joker about 10 minutes later. The pit bull mix was barking excitedly at a tree where a fat raccoon sat on one of the lower branches. The awkward little rascal looked disgruntled. She guessed that Joker had startled it and then chased it up into the tree. No! Joker, bad dog! Joker ignored her and kept bouncing around at the foot of the tree. Maddy wasn't any good at scolding animals. She sighed and looped the paracord leash around Joker's neck again. She would have to get a sturdier collar or maybe a harness. Joker was surprisingly strong for her size. She dragged the dog away from the tree, then she paused. She turned and looked around. They were deeper in the forest, in a place she hadn't visited before. All she saw were pine trees in every direction and a deep emerald canopy overhead. She couldn't see any mountain peaks or familiar landmarks through the dense branches. The sky was overcast, so even the direction of the sun seemed debatable. It was uncanny how every direction looked identical to the next. She had no idea where she was. She turned in a slow circle, trying to remember which way she had come from. She couldn't see the mobile home or her yard. Shit. A cold knot formed in her gut. Usually she didn't go running haphazardly through the woods. She stuck to the trails and familiar spots near her house. Now that she was paying attention, the forest was awfully quiet. She usually heard the trill of bird song and the rustle of squirrels, but everything seemed very still. A branch snapped behind her. Maddy whirled around. Some desperate part of her hoped to see Gareth standing between the trees. She froze. It was a wolf. Her heart raced. She felt her knees begin to quake. Shit. She couldn't believe it. A big black wolf stood between the trees. It was freakishly large, almost the size of a horse. This must be the monster who killed those men, she thought. After telling Dean all about the wolf attack, she didn't expect to encounter the creature in the woods. I'm an idiot, she thought. Of course the predator would still be wandering around the mountainside, where else would it be? Joker whined and hid behind her legs with her tail tucked and her ears down. Maddy felt like she would pass out. Her hands went numb and her heart pounded painfully in her chest. She had never been more terrified in her life. The wolf gazed at her with golden eyes. It was completely silent. Maddy stepped back and almost tripped over Joker. Her instincts told her to run, but her knees were shaking so bad, she found herself sinking to the ground, unable to remain upright. Fuck. This is it, I'm going to be eaten alive. But the monster didn't lunge at her, as she expected. Instead, it seemed to copy her. As she sank to the ground, the beast sat on its haunches. It crouched between the bushes, its ears perked forward, watching her. Maddy felt confused. It wasn't acting wild or aggressive. Was it someone's pet? No way. She didn't see any collar. But it wasn't acting like how she would expect a man-eating predator to act. It's fucking huge. That monster could eat a whole cow, she thought. She could pull out her phone, but what good would that do? Who was she going to call? She wasn't even sure she had reception. Unexpectedly, the wolf stood up. It walked toward her, completely silent. Maddy sat on the ground, shaking, ready to meet her fate. She was going to become dog food, a fitting end to her pathetic life. Then unexpectedly, Joker ran out from behind her. The dog approached the wolf with her belly close to the ground. Joker, no! Maddy cried, terrified she was about to see her dog get eaten alive, which seemed a lot worse than forfeiting her own life. Joker ignored her and approached the wolf with a sad whine. She flipped onto her back in the pine needles and showed her pink belly. Maddy felt like doing much the same. She held her breath, unable to predict what would happen next. The big black wolf looked down at Joker, almost as though it was amused, then it walked around the dog and approached Maddy. It got super close. She didn't move. The beast leaned in and sniffed her face. Maddy held her breath, waiting for its massive jaws to chomp down on her head. The wolf sniffed her chin, then her forehead, then her hair. She was shocked when she felt a cold nose press against her ear. Then the beast licked her cheek. Maddy stiffened at the roughness of its tongue. Maybe she didn't taste very good, because after that, the wolf turned away and started walking back through the woods. Maddy watched it go, still holding her breath. After about 10 feet, the beast paused to look back at her. It waved its tail twice in a lazy sweep. Maddy stared after it with wide eyes. It beckoned to her again with its bushy black tail. It wants me to follow it. So then, is it taking me home? No, this is real life, not Alice in Wonderland. Wolves don't do that. Except, it was totally waiting for her. Feeling surreal, Maddy stood up. Joker got up too and ran after the wolf, keeping a careful distance from the creature, her ears back and tail tucked submissively. Maddy started walking behind the wolf. Once it saw that she was following, the beast continued on through the woods. Maddy wondered why the wolf was alone on the mountain. Usually lone wolves were solitary males looking for a female to start a new pack. She checked the beast's anatomy tucked up under its bushy tail. It was a male. Maddy wondered about that. Maybe it was looking for a mate? "Sorry, I'm not a female wolf," she said to the beast as she walked. The black wolf's ears perked at her voice. Maddy felt a little crazy. "You should find yourself a nice lady and settle down, somewhere far away from here." The black wolf turned its gold eyes back on her, then it kept walking. It was the most bizarre 30 minutes of her life as Maddy followed the wolf through the forest. They didn't take any discernible path that she could recognize, but sure enough, after a bit of time, she noticed some familiar pine trees, a few rock formations and fallen logs. She passed by an old, empty box of Bud Light that must have blown out of the trash can weeks ago. Definitely a Dean. The beast was leading her back home. This can't be happening. The wolf paused when her trailer came into view through the trees. Heavy clouds were gathering in the sky. It looked like it would rain soon. Maddy was thankful she wouldn't be lost out on the mountain in a storm. Joker started wagging her tail when they reached the edge of the backyard. She made an unexpected play bow and barked at the wolf. "Quiet, Joker." Maddy hushed the dog. She hoped her dad didn't come outside, it would ruin the moment. Then she turned to face the beast. "Thank you," she said to the monster. The black wolf regarded her with its intelligent yellow eyes. Then it turned and slunk off through the trees. It moved in complete silence, like a ghost. Maddy shivered. She felt like she was coming out from under a spell. Did that really just happen? Damn, she hadn't gotten a single pic on her phone. No one was going to believe this. Well, maybe B would believe her. Was it really the same beast who had saved her from those men in the woods? She couldn't think of any other explanation. Maybe it had a den close to the trailer? She stood out on her deck for a moment, surveying the forest. Oddly enough, knowing the beast was out there didn't scare her. If it had saved her from those dangerous men and led her back home, then maybe, despite all odds, it was a friend. Maybe some sort of magic existed in the world after all, or maybe she was just a very lucky girl. Then the sliding back door opened and Dean stuck his head out.
There you are. Soup's on.
What?
I made soup. You know, that ramen stuff you like. Even put a fried egg on top. Come on, slowpoke. Let's eat.
20 minutes later, Maddy found herself in the living room, sitting on the gross couch next to her stepdad with a TV tray in front of her. She ate her ramen as Dean talked on and on about his big win at the casino.
I'm gonna get you a new phone. I mean it. Or maybe a computer.
Sure, Dad. Privately, she thought to herself, yeah, right. Maddy listened with half an ear, blindly staring at the weather report on the TV. Dean always talked big when he won a little extra money. She remembered when she used to believe in him and his absurd promises. She used to hang on his every word. Now she wondered when that had changed, maybe around 17? Yeah, probably about that age, she began to realize her stepdad was just useless. She had gone out of her way to get him a job at the hardware store as a maintenance tech. She hassled her manager for months to get him the position. It would cover all their bills. She thought Dean just needed help getting a job. Maybe once he had a job, he wouldn't lie around on his ass all day. She blamed her mom's death for the alcohol problems. She told herself he was just broken up and grieving and needed help. She took it on herself to dig him out of the hole. That's what family did, right? Help each other? Dean acted like he wanted the job. He even went to the interview sober. He started talking about the new Honda truck he was going to buy, how he'd repair the deck, maybe install an AC unit on the mobile. All that. Then, on his first day of work, she found him face down on the couch, an empty handle of vodka next to him, too drunk to even sit up, his pants soiled with shit. She tried to get him up, but he wouldn't budge. Then he disappeared for a week. She went to work ashamed and told her manager her dad was sick. They gave the job to someone else. Yeah. About then, she had realized he was just a flake. Totally useless. She shouldn't have expectations for him. Or really, for anyone.
How bad does it have to get?
Gareth's words echoed in her thoughts. She didn't really have an answer to that question. The break-in 2 nights ago was pretty bad. Her mind returned to Gareth. Why hadn't he texted yet? She checked her cell phone, no new messages. Maybe he was done with her mess. Despite his big words at the arcade, she had scared him off after all.
You think I'll abandon you eventually, right? So you're testing me.
Fuck. She wasn't testing him. She didn't even know what that meant. She just wanted to see if he would text her first. And so far, he wasn't. The evil voice in her head taunted her. Maybe he's just not that serious about you. Maybe he's not even thinking about you. Yeah, that was probably true. She needed to protect herself. She didn't think she could survive a real breakup with him if she actually let her guard down and opened her heart. She closed her eyes for a moment, took a deep breath, and pushed the thought of him far away. She didn't need him. She had learned long ago to rely on herself. It was safer that way. Then her stepdad's words caught her attention.
So, let me get this straight. That guy last night was your boyfriend? No joke? Or was I so shit-faced I hallucinated all that?
Maddy glanced at Dean. Yeah, sorta.
Sorta? What does that mean? You fucking him?
No.
Right, alright. So what's he want with you, then?
We're just hanging out.
Classic line, coming at you like you don't want teen pussy. He's just waiting for you to put out. He's a little old for you. Guys his age only want one thing. Trust me, it's not your brain.
Maddy pushed the noodles around her bowl. She deflated a little. She knew she wasn't that smart. Truth was, she had no idea why Gareth wanted to be with her. She spoke up. He's actually a really good guy. He gave you a ride back from the police department. Her dad rolled his eyes.
Out of the goodness of his heart. Right. He's got you fooled. He better drive me home from Alaska if he wants to fuck my daughter. He's just playing nice, Maddy. Waiting for you to put out. You guys really not fucking?
No, we're not. We just started dating. Dean scoffed like she had said something dumb.
Sure. Some advice? Don't nail yourself down. You're young and tight, and you got great tits. Get yourself 3 boyfriends, yeah? Then all our problems will be solved. You'll have them paying all our bills, hey.
Dean let out a loud laugh. Maddy set down her bowl of ramen. She didn't think she could eat anymore. Her ears burned as her dad rambled on.
You know what? We got to get you set up at Sapphire. I'm telling you, I know the owner. He'll get you a nice job there. Those girls make bank off tips. You don't even need to graduate. You'll make more than all those college kids, and it's close to home. Hell, you could walk there. Anyway.
Dean's tone suddenly turned serious. Maddy felt herself shrink down. She knew that tone. Dean pointed a swollen finger at her. He glared.
Stay the fuck away from that guy, Maddy. He's too old for you, and he looks like a pain in the ass. Last thing I need is some dickhead thinking he's gonna fuck my daughter. What next? Coming round like he owns the place? If I find out you're hanging around him, I'll knock you into next week. You understand?
Maddy dropped her eyes. She nodded. She knew she should feel something, hurt, fear, or disappointment, but she just felt numb. Her hands were suddenly shaking. She was 13 again with a grown man raging at her. She wanted to run and hide.
You understand, chickadee?
Dean made the cutesy name sound threatening. Maddy nodded again. Yeah, I understand.
You want to date some old guy? I got buddies at the bar who'll treat you right. You can have your pick.
That's funny, Dad. It wasn't really a thing anyway. We just hung out a few times. It's not serious.
Damn right.
Maddy felt a little sick. Everything Dean said about men and sex made her feel gross. She stood up. She went into the kitchen and dumped out the rest of her dinner in Joker's bowl, who was more than happy to finish her noodles. She felt hollow inside. She grabbed her phone and walked down the hallway to her cramped bedroom. She shut the door behind her and flopped onto the bed. Murky twilight filtered between the trees outside her window. She popped in her earbuds and turned on her favorite playlist, a mix by Fantagram. Then she checked her text messages again. Still nothing from Gareth. She remembered, suddenly, the missed calls from Roxy on his phone. The thought struck her numb. Maybe that's why she hadn't heard from him. Maybe he was tired of her teenage drama and spending time with Roxy right now. It was too painful to think about. Hot tears stung her eyes. She let the tears begin to spill down her face. I'm a fucking worthless idiot, she thought, sniffling like a baby. Why couldn't she just handle her life? Outside her window, the sky deepened into late evening. It started to rain. Hi there! Thanks for listening! Looks like Gareth and I are having our first lover's quarrel, and I have no idea if we'll stay together. Stay tuned for the next episode, with new chapters posted every Monday and Friday at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Like and subscribe to this channel for more story.